Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you for connecting. And welcome to our 10th edition of Impulse Talks live from Paris. We are really glad to have you with us here today to talk about hydrogen. Our ambition with Impulse Talks is to provide an international overview of innovation and tech development in the industry. Each month, we are featuring some of the best startups, along with testimonies from industry leaders and perspectives from venture capital investors, covering topics such as digital industry and, as it is the case today, industry with the focus on hydrogen. So if everyone can please turn off your microphones and your cameras to ensure that this session can run as smoothly as possible. And for your information, this session is being recorded. Next slide, please, Karen. And so to begin with, thanks a lot to our distribution partners for relaying the information about this session. Next slide. And before we start, just a few words about Impulse. At Impulse, we are passionate about innovation in industry. We are convinced that there is a huge opportunity for innovation and entrepreneurs in these fields and that they can help reshape the industry and improve efficiency and sustainability. Our role is to help detect the most promising innovative solutions and to connect them with the market. We act as a third-party facilitator between industry players, startups, and investors. We work with many of the largest names and industry leaders in our focus sectors and more than 600 startup companies that we have helped accelerate their go-to-market. Part of our job is to bring people together across the value chain and across geographies. This is exactly what we're doing today, considering how diverse the audience is. Next slide. Next slide. And indeed, we currently have approximately 70 to 80 participants online, and almost 200 participants have registered for the session. They are industry leaders in materials, chemicals, engineering firms, contractors, and venture capital firms. And we are really glad to gather people from all over the world today on such an interesting topic. So if we can just see the code for the questionnaire there. On the next slide, I believe. You will receive a link to a questionnaire. In the chat, you can also flash the QR code and it will be on the screen. It's just a short questionnaire, so you can give us your feedback after the event and you can tell us if you wish to be put in touch with any of the startups. And if you, yes, we will be more than happy to make introductions. To discuss the topic of today, I'm now happy to give the floor to our industry expert here at Impulse. So Jerome, I pass the mic to you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. So next slide, please. Perfect. My name is Jerome Pasquier, and I'm very happy to host this event, especially today's session talking about the development of the hydrogen industry. A few words about the topic of today. The idea of combustion of the hydrogen as an energy carrier has existed for years, an idea which regularly comes back into the news at the time of the energy transition. Today, a more local approach to energy production and use, the development of renewable energies, a strong increase in use is linked to hydrogen, increase its profitability, as well as massive investments are all opportunities for structuring the hydrogen sector. European policies such as the hydrogen strategy ambition to decarbonize hydrogen production are followed by, can you just switch off your microphone, please? Thank you very much. Are followed by ambitious production targets, a tenfold increase in decarbonized hydrogen production to meet 24% of final energy consumption in 2050 at the European level. Next slide, please. So an interesting thing to notice is that during the organization of this session, startups having an innovative solution in the hydrogen sector were quite hard to find or were too busy to participate, showing that the sector is in development. In contrast, corporate players were very interested in sharing with other corporates on the value chain. Feedbacks led us at Impulse to think about launching an initiative that will aim to bring together players across the hydrogen value chain, to explore potential synergies between these projects, identify new business models, monitor innovative solutions in the sector, and share the results with the entire industry. So if you want to join, or if you want more information about our initiative, feel free to contact me after this show. Next slide, please. Coming back today. So to start, we will have the pleasure to welcome Christophe Brice from EVOLEN. Then we will listen to Capella Festa from Schlumberger, who will present the company Genvia. We will then hear 4 entrepreneurs from the US, Spain, and France, and Switzerland pitching their innovations, each covering a different aspect of the value chain. And finally, we will hear from Raphael Tilot from Cockerill and Antoine Delafargue from Total Carbon Neutrality Ventures. This is a 1 hour and 15-minute session, and we will have a few minutes at the end of this session for a Q&A. If you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to post them in the chat, and we will ask them at the end of the session, or maybe after if we don't have the time for the Q&A session at the end of the session. Without further ado, let's start the 10th edition of Impulse Talks dedicated to the hydrogen. Kelly, I give you back the microphone to introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Jerome. We will now start with Christophe, who will present EVOLEN, a French association for companies and professionals serving the energy industry. So, and again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, and we'll ask them at the end if we have time. So, Christophe, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening to everybody. My name is Christophe Brice. I'm project manager for renewable energy within EVOLEN. And I'm going to briefly present you today the French hydrogen industry. So next slide, please. So just a quick word about EVOLEN. This is a French association for companies and professionals serving the energy industry. And it has more than 250 companies as members. And the role of EVOLEN is to support those companies and encourage and promote innovation. And we have 2 programs to do this, CTEF and EVOLEN Up, that I will quickly introduce at the end of this presentation. And to contribute to the dissemination of scientific, technical, and economical knowledge and promote the expertise of the members. And we work together with other associations in France, and we have a number of committees, and we organize events and publications. Next slide, please. Okay, so before we speak about hydrogen, it's good to see what are the French objective for energy transition. So you can see them here on the right of the slide. And the one that is of interest for us today is the objective of greenhouse gas emission reduction by 40% by 2030 and attaining carbon neutrality by 2050. So what does it mean for hydrogen? So the current consumption of hydrogen in France is about 900,000 tons per year, which is about 10% of the consumption within Europe. And you see that globally it's about 70 million tons. This hydrogen is mainly gray, which means that it's made from natural gas via SMR, steam methane reforming. And it's the current cheapest form of hydrogen production, and accounts for most of the production in the world. But the problem is that it emits 9 kilograms of carbon dioxide per kilogram of hydrogen. So the objective of France for hydrogen are there, exactly as they appear in the French law. It's scale up low carbon and renewable hydrogen and its industrial, energy and mobility uses, with a view to reach 20 to 40% of total hydrogen consumption by 2030. And that will contribute to a significant reduction of the carbon dioxide emissions. Next slide, please. Well, but obviously, why are we using grey hydrogen today? As I mentioned, we are using about 95% of grey hydrogen in France, and it's because it's the cheapest form of energy. So what we need to do to have massification of renewable hydrogen is actually to bridge this gap in the cost of production of grey hydrogen and green hydrogen. You see that for grey hydrogen, on the right, we are in between $1 to $1.5 per kilogram, whereas renewable hydrogen is currently in between $4 to $6 per kilogram. The cost of this renewable hydrogen is mainly driven by the cost of renewable electricity and by the electrolyzer's efficiency and life duration. So to reduce this cost and bridge the gap, we need to see an industrialization of these electrolyzers and a massification of the use. And this cannot be achieved without a strong public support. Next slide, please. So what are the stakes of this French hydrogen strategy? First, we have environmental stakes. As I say, it's decarbonation of industry and transport and overall reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions. Second, we have the economical stakes, the emergence of a new job-creating sector, and I'll present the objective afterwards. Third is energy sovereignty. We want smaller dependency to the hydrocarbons imports. And fourth and last is technological independence to enhance the French assets in the global competitiveness. Next slide, please. So this French national strategy is quite ambitious and is designed along 3 axes. The first one is the decarbonation of the industry via the emergence of a French electrolysis sector. So we want first to decarbonize all the existing industrial uses that I've presented before previously, and that are mainly refining and ammonia. And also an industrialization supported by the massification of uses, in particular in a mobility sector. So the second axis here is develop a heavy transport mobility using decarbonized hydrogen. So that will be done via some large territorial projects driven mainly by the French regions, and that will allow to mutualize hydrogen demand. And the third axis is actually the promotion of R&D, innovation, and development of a French expertise. So you see there's a number of points here. It's hydrogen to mitigate intermittency of renewable sources, new industrial uses, the decarbonation of maritime and aerial transport, new infrastructures, and also development of university campus. So overall, this national strategy has a budget of more than 7 billion euros until 2028, and it has 2 main periods. And the first period, which will last until 2023, has a budget of 3.4 billion euros. And you can see here, as the budget is split in between these 3 priorities that are on the left here. Next slide, please. So this objective of the French hydrogen strategy, the main objectives here is actually to increase the installed base of electrolyzers from where it is at the moment, or where it was in 2020, so 5 megawatts, up to 6.5 gigawatts by the end of this decade. And that will represent a production, an annual production of about 700,000 tons of green hydrogen per year, with corresponding avoided carbon emission of 6 million tons per year, which is the equivalent of the annual emissions of Paris. In terms of job creations, we should see in between 50 to 150,000 jobs created by 2030. And you can see a few examples at the bottom of this slide here in terms of the expectations or the objective for light road vehicles, EV road vehicles, and ships and trains. Next slide, please. So how can we summarize the French hydrogen industry? Well, first thing we see is that we have an ambitious national strategy to give the impetus. But it's not just that. We've got more than 300 actors. Some of them are there on the right of this slide. Large companies, small and medium companies. We've got territorial entities, competitive clusters, technical centers, research labs, and obviously startups. So it's a very active and voluntarist ecosystem, with some actors which are actually at the cutting edge of technology and which could potentially become some European or even global leaders. They have a strong support from territorial entities, more than 55 of them, and they demonstrate this support via some strong investment. And finally, France is a stakeholder of the Clean Hydrogen Alliance, which is the European strategy for hydrogen. You see on the right of the slide that these actors cover the full value chain of hydrogen, from production to usages, including logistics. Next slide, please. Some of the other key assets that we see in France for hydrogen is first is this central position within Europe, and also central position along the European hydrogen backbone. So you may have heard of this. This backbone will allow to link via pipelines the south of Europe to the north of Europe, and it will be progressively built and should be completed. And well, it will never be completed, but you can see that this picture you can see here correspond to where it should be in 2035 or 2040. Second is that we've got in France the second largest offshore wind power potential in Europe after UK. And this could be key to develop the production of hydrogen from offshore wind. And I will quickly come back to this point afterwards. Third thing is that we've got a low carbon electricity mix, one of the lowest one in Europe and in the world actually, thanks mainly to nuclear energy. And the fourth is that we've got strong potential for saline and aquifer storage, or storage in saline aquifer, sorry, with more than 100,000 tons of hydrogen. Next point, please. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so just a quick focus on one of the working groups that we have within EVOLEN. This is a group dedicated to the hydrogen production from offshore wind. If you can come back to the previous one, please. So the objective of this working group is to define some business model applicable to the French market. And we are trying to answer some of the key questions, such as what is the value of producing hydrogen offshore rather than onshore? What is the optimal location for electrolyzers in a dedicated platform or on the turbine? What are the technological requirements, in particular the marinization of electrolyzers, etc., etc. Next slide, please. So very quickly, because I don't have much time left, can you go to next slide, please? CTEF slide. So CTEF is an EVOLEN program dedicated to open innovation that has 13 leading companies in the field of energy. You can see them at the bottom of the slide here, and it aims to spring out collaborative project in between these industrial groups and startups. So actually in 2020, we had 14 of these projects were supported for an overall budget of 4 million euros. And the largest project was actually to demonstrate the economic viability of a novel hydrogen production technology. And the winner was, the startup leading this project was Athena Research and Innovation. And this project was supported up to 50% of the total project cost by the partners that you can see that. Next slide, please. Next slide. Last and not least, it's EVOLEN Up. It's a program that provides startups a unique access to decision makers and industry experts. It's got 13 corporate partners that you can see on the bottom right of the screen there. And there's been up to 23 integrated startups so far that you see on the right of the slide. And the last selection event in April was dedicated to hydrogen with a number of topics covered that you can see here: the production of green or blue hydrogen, transformation of gas network, storage of hydrogen and natural hydrogen, etc. And that's the end of my presentation. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Christophe, for your presentation. Just a quick reminder to everybody that you can ask the questions via the link which will be sent in the chat, or you can flash your QR code to get the survey, and we will get back to you with the responses to your questions. I'm now glad to welcome Capella from Schlumberger, who will present Genvia. Genvia is a clean hydrogen technology venture created to accelerate clean hydrogen production, energy storage, and fuel applications at scale. So, Capella.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks to the Impulse team for giving me the opportunity to come and speak to you about Genvia, my chosen specialised subject. It's the joint venture that we've recently created between Schlumberger and the CEA and other partners. So I wanted to take my 10 minutes this morning and tell you a little bit about why Schlumberger's chosen to invest in this in Genvia and in effectively the next generation of technology for hydrogen production and use. So maybe first, just a few words on how we see the sort of macro context, if you will. So what are the mega trends that are the backdrop to how Schlumberger took this investment decision. And you know, Jerome there in his introduction mentioned you know, the drive to net zero in 2050, and I think we see that this has gathered momentum in Europe. But even a week ago, Wednesday of last week, it didn't have the momentum that it has today after Biden's climate summit. And I think the fact that both allies and adversaries attended and engaged, and then the US promised to reduce emissions by 52% in 2030 from 2005 numbers. I mean, it's definitely a boost in the geographical range, if you will, of the momentum that we've seen for a while in Europe. But we feel, you know, really now this drive to net zero is not going to leave us. So you know, there's a lot of buzz around the climate commitments, particularly this week. But I think that you know, we shouldn't ignore the fact that achieving net zero is a really monumental task. It's almost hard to comprehend the scale of what we're talking about and how far-reaching its implications are. And when we look at sort of, you know, taking on the monumental task, I think the second mega trend that we see is massive electrification. You know, whichever sector you come from or you're looking to decarbonize, clearly carbon-free electrification is our very first port of call, if you will. In Europe at the moment, around 20% of our energy consumption is in the form of electrons, and the remaining 80% in the form of molecules. So we really have to push these electrification levels in mobility, in homes, in industry. And it seems very feasible to think that we could at least, you know, double the level of electrification, and you know, many are saying we can get beyond 50%. But this leaves us with two challenges, if you will. What do we do with the remaining 50% of energy uses where electrification, say, is not possible, or maybe more accurately, it looks as if it will always be prohibitively expensive? And how do we make low carbon electricity available where and when you want it in a world that's no longer too keen on new nuclear or new hydro projects? So in some ways, these two challenges that we're left with boil down to one. You know, the third mega trend that I would say is the drive to find a stable, clean molecule that you can store and you can move around. And the bottom line is that the world needs a clean molecule to fully decarbonize. And if it's not hydrogen, it will almost certainly be a derivative of hydrogen. And so, you know, the hydrogen needs to be produced carbon-free, of course, and it needs to be considerably cheaper than it is today, as Christophe, you know, alluded to earlier in his talk. And this will need technical innovation, which we're here talking about today, and it will need scale up. So, you know, when Schlumberger looked at this, we saw that, you know, cost competitive electrolytic hydrogen production really is at the heart of the decarbonisation challenge. And that when you think, you know, what is cost competitive clean hydrogen production about, and Christophe alluded to this earlier, it's about increasing electrolyzer efficiency, and it's about reducing electrolyzer cost. And these two are really the main goals of what Genvia has been set up to do. So let me tell you a little bit more about Genvia and the technology that we're working on. So I mentioned earlier that Genvia is a partnership between Schlumberger and the CEA. I'm sure many of you will know the CEA as one of Europe's, or indeed one of the world's leading research institutes. We have three other partners, Vicat, Vinci Construction, and the investment arm of the Occitanie region in France. So we have actually very broad public-private sort of partnership. And we do think that tackling some of these big challenges ahead of us is also going to be about creating these sort of integration between different sectors and big private public partnerships. And you know, today I had to ask the organizers whether I was presenting as a large corporate or as a startup, and in some ways Genvia is a little bit of both. So Genvia was established on the 1st of March, so that's only about 6 weeks ago. But as you can see, we have some heavyweight parents, 5 heavyweight parents almost. By next month, we will already have of the order of 40 direct employees and about 70 working for us in all between the ecosystem of the CEA and Schlumberger as well. So the technology, so the solid oxide electrolyzer and fuel cell technology that Genvia will be maturing and industrializing, it's a high temperature device. So the CEA has been working on it now for, in fact, over 15 years. We're very happy that they continue to work on it even when the fashion for talking about a hydrogen economy went away. It promises a real step change in efficiency levels when you compare to PEM or alkaline devices available today. And that means more hydrogen for every unit of electricity. And as Christophe alluded to earlier, you know, since you have of the order of 70% of your cost of electrolytic hydrogen is the cost of the electricity, then clearly increasing your hydrogen yield has a big impact on your overall levelized cost of hydrogen. So the solid oxide technology also has the advantage that it can work reversibly. And for the moment, Genvia is the only company that has a reversible electrolyzer and fuel cell. So that means the same device can work both as an electrolyzer, producing hydrogen, and as a fuel cell, taking the hydrogen or another fuel and producing electricity. So we do feel that this opens the door to various use cases where we're thinking, you know, power to X to power, how can I store those green electrons and use them again later? So as well as improved efficiency, reversibility, the solid oxide technology in fuel cell mode has another advantage over competing technologies in that it is fuel agnostic. So that means that it can be powered by any fuel that contains hydrogen. And we think this fuel flexibility actually makes it a really interesting technology for the future. This is particularly interesting in applications such as shipping, where we're much more likely to see low carbon fuels that are derivatives of hydrogen rather than hydrogen itself being shipped and used as the propulsion fuel. So very quickly, what will Genvia be doing in the next few years? We have a lot of work ahead of us. As I said earlier, this is a monumental task for all of us. So we're going to be maturing the technology. As you're probably aware, the solid oxide technology is not at the same maturity levels as PEM or alkaline. So we need to increase the lifetime, prove up the efficiency, scale up production. So bringing costs down is all about industrializing the production process. So we build a pilot line this year. By the end of the year, we'll have our pilot line running here in France. And then also about integrating the technology into different use cases in prototypes and demonstration cases, reaching out again to other industries, really understanding the use cases and building those integrated systems that give the efficiency for the overall system. So maybe just to conclude, you know, the scale of the tasks that are before us, given the sort of backdrop of the mega trends and the drive to net zero, it really is monumental, you know, and I think sometimes we can forget just how big a task it is. We need technical innovation, we need scale up, and you know, maybe we need to be looking at the challenges more holistically than we have in the past. We need to be thinking about integration with the systems and the use cases, and I think we need to be thinking about broader partnerships, and Genvia certainly is a broad public-private partnership, and we're very excited of the work and the momentous work ahead of us. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Capella. Thank you very much. So now we will start the startup presentations with Vyacheslav, who will present Natural Hydrogen Energy. Natural Hydrogen Energy is a startup from the United States that explores natural sources of hydrogen gas that is generated by a geochemical process in the Earth's crust. So, Vyacheslav, the mic is over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to present what we're doing. And as we've seen in previous presentation, that you will all agree that we need a cheap and renewable source of hydrogen, and in our company we believe we can meet that need that. So what we are doing, we are seeking sources of natural hydrogen, and we are working on applications, how to extract it and how to use it. So the company is located in the United States, and we've been working on this topic for 8 years already within this startup, and I am managing it. Next slide, please. So we spent a lot of years by studying the topic of natural hydrogen. So before creating this startup, our team comes from the research, and we spent years on doing this, and we understood that actually the natural hydrogen has been completely underestimated by the Earth scientists. And more we are studying it, and more other scientists are studying this topic, more we discover that it is widespread on the Earth. It is present on all continents. It can be accumulated in large quantities, and it is produced by inorganic reactions happening in the Earth's crust. These reactions are happening all the time. Without our will, so they are natural. They are not related with fossil deposits, and this hydrogen is constantly being produced, and it's constantly degassing. It's slowly diffusing through the Earth's crust to the surface. And so our key activity is locate the places where the natural hydrogen is the most concentrated on the ground, and then drill and then extract it from because it's generated naturally. The estimated cost of natural hydrogen is very low. It's less than $1 per kilogram, and this hydrogen, again, it is a renewable, and we believe it can it can boost the development of a hydrogen economy. Next slide, please. I also sent a link for the video. I don't know if the video will be included in the presentation or not. And next slide, please. Yeah, sorry, go a little back. So if you would like to learn more, I can recommend you two things. First thing is on the left-hand side on the slide, you see it's a review on this topic, on the topic of natural hydrogen, which I published last year in the peer-reviewed journal Earth Science Reviews. So this article combines the current knowledge in this topic, the topic of natural hydrogen. It shows the discoveries of this gas in different geologic environments, and it conclusively demonstrates that natural hydrogen is much more widespread than previously thought. And what is important to point that for the first time with natural hydrogen, the hydrogen becomes not the energy vector when you need any other source of energy. You need electricity, you need methane, or you need biomass or something else, and then you convert it to hydrogen and then you use it. In the case of natural hydrogen, it is a primary source of energy. So this is a primary new source of renewable energy. And of course, you can read more in details in this paper. And in June, on June 2nd and 3rd, there will be first international summit fully devoted to the topic of natural hydrogen. So it will be an online event, and on the right-hand side on the slide you can see this the address, the web address of this event. So it's hnetsummit.com, and so you will see it will cover all the topics of exploration for natural hydrogen. And if you can please start the video I shared with you, it will be great.
I think we don't have any time left, if I'm correct, and we will send the video afterwards.
Okay, this is good. And you can find the video on our website. It's nh2e.com. Thank you very much for your attention, for the possibility to present.
Thank you so much for introducing us to natural hydrogen energy. Now I will pass you over to Andres, who will talk about H2Site, a Spanish company that provides a solution to produce on-site green hydrogen. On-site production avoids energy waste for compression, transportation and leaks. And just a reminder once more that any questions you may have, you can pose them through the link for the questionnaire, and we will make sure that they get answered and that we pass the responses back to you. So Andres, I'll give you the mic.
Thank you very much, Kelly. So, well, hello everyone. Thanks for the invitation. My name is Andres Galnares and I'm the CEO of H2Site. If we go to the next slide, please. But well, what we do within H2Site is that we produce cost-efficient on-site renewable hydrogen for the industry and mobility segments using feedstock versatile membrane reactors. That means that, for example, we can convert ammonia into hydrogen with 97.5% efficiency. And we can also separate almost all of the hydrogen in a natural gas hydrogen stream flowing through existing distribution pipelines. Next slide, please. The company was actually created as a spin-off from Technalia and the Technical University of Eindhoven. And both entities had collaborated on European projects for the last 10 years, gathering more than 70 million euros in European project funds to develop this concept of advanced membrane reactors. So once they got to a TRL level of the solution that was at around 8, partners looked for an external investor, and ENGIE showed their trust or its trust on the technology. Since the investment of ENGIE, the company has raised 3 million euros in equity and non-dilutive funding, and these have been used to build the first 2 commercial reactors and to build a membrane manufacturing line that is being installed in Spain, and that will be operational in January 2021. Next slide, please. Well, why have we done that? In a nutshell, it's because, next slide, please. Thank you. Because we know that transporting hydrogen is a pain in the neck. There are plenty of people that say that hydrogen will cost 1.5 euros per kilogram or 2.5 euros per kilogram, but the average small and medium consumers are paying 11, 12, 15 euros per kilogram. So transport represents today between 60 and 80% of the end price that consumers pay for this gas. And this is not only an inefficiency in form of price, but also in form of environmental issue, because over 10% of the hydrogen leaks during the compression, storage, and decompression phase. And hydrogen is actually an indirect greenhouse gas that has 5.6 times the global warming potential that CO2 has. So the question as a society for us, I guess, is, do we want to replace the CO2 problem with a hydrogen problem? Well, within H2Site, we do want to solve this problem for a market that is today poorly served, which are small and medium consumers of hydrogen. Next slide, please. How does it work? Well, we actually do not like putting all our eggs in the same basket. This is why our systems are designed to work with very different feedstocks. We work with methanol, with biogas, with ammonia, with ethanol, with DME, well, we take what feedstock is available that contains hydrogen. We put it into a column that contains these small rods that you can see on the picture. And these rods are our membranes. These membranes have a very, very high selectivity towards hydrogen, which is the only thing that can go through them. And this allows us to obtain a fuel cell purity hydrogen in one single process step. All this goes into a 20-feet container that we deliver to our customers and install it in 3 days. Next slide, please. This is actually what our customers are asking from us. It's a modular, compact solution that they can install and remove in a few days, that can adapt easily to different environments. We are now targeting 4 market segments. The first one is small and medium hydrogen consumers like flat glass, small chemistry, food and beverage. The second one is mobility for captive fleets like hydrogen refueling stations for buses and so on, but also onboard mobility to replace heavy fuel oil for the maritime sector. Then there is separating hydrogen and adjusting the hydrogen content for hydrogen retailers and natural gas infrastructure owners. And finally, decarbonized backup power solutions for data centers and sensitive industrial processes. So today the company is 13 months old. We have leveraged on commercial partnerships with ENGIE and with local players in Europe to build our first 2 commercial units that will be installed in France and Spain, while we have developed a commercial pipeline that is worth 40 million euros in less than 6 months. Next, please. So there are 2 product verticals within H2Site. The reactor you can see there is the generation vertical, right? So what we will do is we will feed, for example, ammonia through the lower part of it. We will heat it up to 300, 350 degrees, and hydrogen will go through the membranes that are inside the reactor, and we will recover it through the upper part of the reactor, sending nitrogen gas to the atmosphere. Next, please. This second column, thank you, that you can see there represents the product vertical separation. So as you can see, the column looks very similar, only there is no reaction in it. Membranes will simply act as a filter, and we will separate, for instance, the hydrogen from the CH4 in the blended gas stream. So to summarize, yeah, our reactors today have been designed for small and medium hydrogen consumers from 4 to 4,000 kilograms per day, with numerous feedstocks and working at low temperatures, without the inefficiencies linked to downscaling a larger process that is meant to produce several tens or hundreds of tons per day. And while we hold intellectual property today that covers our unique membranes, the manufacturing and palladium recovery process that we use for our membranes in very little amounts, and the hydrogen separation capabilities from blended streams. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Andres, for your presentation. Now I will give the floor to Andre, who will present Airthium. Airthium develops a seasonal battery that can store renewable energy for years instead of hours. Its storage system is made of liquid ammonia, molten nitrite salt, water, and steel, being 100% recyclable. So, Andre, it's over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to this event. I'm Andre Klushko. I'm the CEO of Airthium. We build seasonal energy storage systems to provide 100% renewable energy, guaranteed 24 hours a day, 365 days a year at low cost. Next slide, please. Thank you. I co-founded Airthium in France in 2016. We obtained several innovation prizes, including the Concours Mondial de l'Innovation or World Innovation Contest. We went through Y Combinator in 2017. So Y Combinator is a US-based startup accelerator with worldwide reach that produced Airbnb, Stripe, Boom Supersonic, Relativity Space, and one that hit headlines recently, Coinbase. Since 2019, we have been hosted by Air Liquide, and today we are raising a total of €3 million round on WeFunder. We are closing the first 1.2 million fraction in 2 days on the equity crowdfunding platform WeFunder. I'll come back to this later. Next slide, please. So why seasonal energy storage? That's because today's storage is not enough. Suppose you try to supply a constant load with a perfectly balanced wind and solar asset. Let's say you try to add 30 hours of battery storage. Suppose your power plant produces solar and wind with the national aggregated pattern of the 2018 actual French solar and wind production. The data comes from RTE Economics. The result of this simulation is that you have 44 days where blackouts occur, either for a few hours or for the entire day. This is because the 30 hours of storage are not enough. Although, if you try to build those batteries at the current cost of lithium ion, it would cost you 5 times the cost of the PV and wind farm. Next slide, please. Now, suppose you have a more realistic solar-only farm, and you try to position your storage between the farm and the outgoing power line. Suppose you oversize the PV farm by 60% and put 150 hours of storage, which is a lot more. Using batteries for such storage would cost about 25 times the cost of the PV farm itself in terms of capex. Even then, you would still have 23 days of blackouts in the end of winter, when your storage facility runs dry after struggling through the fall and early winter. So even 150 hours of storage are not enough. Next slide, please. Then what would work? With our system, we can build 1,000 hours of storage for 1 times to 3 times the cost of the PV farm, and only have to oversize by 49% instead of 60%. With this, you finally get 0 days of blackout. And this strategy allows you to transform a solar and wind farm into a baseload production facility. So you can finally completely shut down coal farms, natural gas farms, peaker plants, everything. You can run an entire country on renewable electricity alone. Next slide, please. So this storage can, of course, be used with any mix of solar and wind. Our value proposition is 100% renewable energy, guaranteed available 24/7, 365 days a year. Next slide, please. So how does this work? With our system, the part that does the heavy lifting in our system and enables the 1,000 hours of storage is an ammonia tank, liquid ammonia storage at atmospheric pressure, starting at 15 megawatt and 15 gigawatt hours, so 1,000 hours of storage. Ammonia costs $0.2 per kilowatt hour capex to build. That's almost 1,000 times cheaper than the current price lithium-ion batteries, and can be sited anywhere. You don't need a cavern to store ammonia. But ammonia alone cannot work quickly because the system used to produce ammonia, which is a green Haber-Bosch plant, is still expensive in terms of capex per kilowatt. And furthermore, the current round-trip efficiency of power to ammonia to power going through combustion for the last step is currently around 30%. Obviously, if innovations like solid oxide electrolytic cells from Genvia and others come into the market, we will be able to get a higher efficiency because part of this 30% comes from the current electrolyzers, which has 65 to 70% efficiency. And then to use ammonia a smaller fraction of the year, we use molten salt storage, which is kind of like in a computer. You have the SSD and the hard drive. The SSD goes very fast, but costs more per gigabyte, and the hard drive is slower, but it costs a lot less per gigabyte. So when you combine the two, you can downsize the scale of the Haber-Bosch plant and save on the cost of the entire system. Let's say you have a 1 gigawatt demand and you have a 3 gigawatt solar farm. You can have just 600 megawatts of electrolyzers. And that will be enough because you will only call on your ammonia backup power about 20% of the year or less. And that is why combining molten salts in pumped heat energy storage and ammonia combustion in a single system is the key to have the lowest cost of 100% renewable electricity guaranteed all year long. Next slide, please.
Just to let you know, Andre, we have very few time left.
Okay, so this is basically our team. We are four people full-time, 3 advisors. Next slide, please. And we are raising a seed round on WeFunder, currently on 1 million, 2 days left. You can go on wefunder.com/Airthium and invest in Airthium today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Now I will pass you to Mardit, who will present EH Group from Switzerland. Startup is specialised in the design and production of fuel cell technology. fuel cell systems can provide clean power for a variety of applications: trucks, buses, trains, drones, etc. So, pass the mic to you, Martin.
Yes, hello, can you hear me? Is everything?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm the director and founder of ES Group Engineering. We are a company based in French-speaking part of Switzerland, and yes, we are focused on design, development, and scaling up of low-temperature PEM fuel cells. And what we heard from the discussion, which is very much valid. One of the things that we are trying to address here is the cost, complexity, and the scaling of the product. This is what we have, and we've managed to address with our current existing technology. Can you go on the next slide, please? So what we have done is we engineered our stack technology into microstructure level in such a way that is very compact, lightweight, and efficient compared to other technologies that you see in the market. And then, due to the nature of the design, we also developing the innovative production machinery with our partners. Again, they're based in Switzerland, other side of Switzerland, the German-speaking part. And with this production machinery, we would be able to reduce the cost per kilowatt to below 100 euros. And these two are somewhat interconnected, so it means we can't use the production machinery to produce other stack technologies. So that's why it has to be our concept. So what happened is that with the machine, once it comes to the full operation, we would be able to assemble one as a 100 kilowatt stack in a matter of 10-15 minutes, which is extremely fast, and it would answer question to the automotive industry, for example. And the third important aspect of the technology is that due to this microstructural design, we go down to the capillary forces, and it helps us to operate the stack in almost any orientations. So hence, it's almost with the minimal effect of gravity. So we saw quite a lot of interest from the space, and also applications, and also ESA, European Space Agency. So we have started a collaboration with them on specific projects on space and the lunar. We protected the technology as well, and we are part of the Solar Impulse Foundation. Next slide, please. So it is a very general overview about our technology, where we are compared to the existing technologies, and about the volume power density and the weight power density. So even with the first generation, we are well ahead of it. I'm not going to go into much technical information, but what is the other advantage that our technology gives at the system level is that we are able to simplify the system and also reduce the parasitic loads and the overall energy balance. Next slide, please. So we are not limited with the applications. We are looking at different ones, stationary, mobile applications, and also on aviation and maritime. But we see quite a lot of interest from the heavy-duty trucks and buses at the moment recently. So we are quite a lot have activities on that sector, and specifically on the maritime at the moment. Next one, please. So the global market, I guess you're all aware of that one. For the last few years, we've seen the exponential, expansion of these activities, especially in Europe, I guess. But having said that, around the world, we see a massive jump, like in China, in Japan, and America. They're also pushing in that direction. And again, we're not limited with any application, I gotta say. So each continent seems they focus on anything, some specific part of it. But in Europe, we see a complete mixture of all of them together, which is a very positive aspect of that. Next slide, please. So the team, this is a very short overview of the core team. We have very experienced people in the team. We managed to bring them in. It took us a long time. But each one of them, they have around 15-20 years experience in the field of relevant applications. And also we have a scientific advisory board that we do collaboration with universities in Switzerland and also in the UK. Next slide, please. That's it. Okay, with that one, I just finished my presentation, and yeah, we welcome questions afterwards if you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Now we will have Christophe. We will have Raphael, who will present our corporate testimony. So John will present John Cockerill and their initiatives in the hydrogen industry. Raphael, it's over to you.
Yes, good afternoon to all. I'm really happy to talk to you this afternoon. So within John Cockerill, I'm in charge for renewable activities in hydrogen. Yes, next slide, please. So a few words first on who is John Cockerill. We are a medium-sized equipment manufacturer with a turnover in the range of €1 billion, present all around the world, privately owned for the last 20 years, so very stable shareholding structure, about 5,000 employees, and we are a leader in hydrogen. Next slide. Indeed, in hydrogen, yes, next slide. We can skip this one in the interest of time. In hydrogen, we are the largest manufacturer of electrolyzer in the world today. We have several decades of experience. We have more than 1,000 references in many countries, many industries, and we have a range of alkaline electrolyzer from very small one all the way to the largest stack available today on the market, with already 12 references on these stacks. We focus a lot in our commercial development or technical development on much larger hydrogen production system, above 100 megawatts up to 1 gigawatt. And today we have several of these projects under development. Large plan on R&D, I will come back on that point later. And beyond electrolyzer, we also do offer equipment for hydrogen mobility. Next slide. Manufacturing capacity, today we have a brand new factory in China. It was inaugurated 2 years ago. It's the largest plant in the world, 350 megawatts running now. And beyond that, we have also announced a new factory, which is going to produce ultimately 1 gigawatt per year of electrolyzer in Alsace, in France, and you see a picture of this factory. In fact, it's a conversion of an existing factory of John Cockerill, which is active in a different line of business. Next slide. Yes, technical improvement R&D. As you are all aware of, today hydrogen, I would say green hydrogen, is still very much of a niche market. We are, John Cockerill, the #1 in a market which is fairly small. So we are only at the very beginning of a massive injection of capital, of creativity into R&D. The challenge for all of us is to be ahead of the game within 5 years, within 10 years. With our position today within John Cockerill, we are on very large alkaline stack, and we believe we still have a lot of room for improvement. And these are some of the initiatives we are conducting to improve our equipment. We are working to increase the size of our stack. From 5, we are going to go to 7.5 megawatts, to 10 and to 20 megawatt per stack. We are also working on increasing the current densities within the stack, and that will help to dramatically reduce the capex of the stack. We are working also to improve the efficiency of the cell and therefore to reduce the energy needs to produce hydrogen. We believe there is quite some gain within reach there, and of course that will lead to reducing the OPEX and the running cost of the electrolyzer. Increasing the output pressure is a priority for us. We are already at 15 bar and 30 bars, depending on our equipment. It is key. Most hydrogen applications are at high pressure, specifically mobility, as an example. And by saving the first 3 or 4 stages of compression, you save quite a lot in terms of capex, of OPEX, as well as maintenance costs. We are working also on the containerization of our solution. This is more for the smaller electrolyzer in relation, for instance, to mobility application. Yeah, next slide. Some example of recent project which we have announced. The upper left corner shows a project we have with Cormis and Engie. This is about CO2 capture and reutilization to produce e-methane. So this is a 70 megawatt project of electrolyzer. Last year we sold a project in Taiwan for 25 megawatts, so already pretty large. And this year, in fact, we are supplying a 70 megawatt project in China. So we see that we are already in fairly large projects. Last week, we have announced a project that you see at the bottom left corner, the airport project with the airport of Liège in Belgium. This is a mobility project. And then final example is a project we are developing with many partners in the port of Barcelona in Spain. This is a 100 megawatt project. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your presentation. We will now pass on to Antoine, who will give us our investor testimony. Thank you, Antoine, for being here. It's now your turn to tell us about Total Carbon Strategy Ventures.
Yeah.
The venture capital arm of Total focused on finding, funding and fostering high potential startups, which will contribute to creating a low carbon future. So Antoine, it's over to you.
Yeah, thank you, and nice to be there. Sorry, I have a hard stop at 4:15, so I will go pretty fast. So I work for the venture capital arm of the Group Total. So if you look at the first slides, just a basic overview of the Group Total, and I won't spend a lot of time if you can go there. Yeah, just to say that we are one of the oil and gas majors that have moved quite the fastest to energy transition, and the role of our fund is really to catalyze this transition and invest in startups which are pushing the boundaries of carbon neutrality and energy transition. So we focus on everything that is related to reduce emission in the energy and mobility sectors. Even now we add circular economy as well. And the way we work, we have a 400 million euro fund, and we invest more or less at every stage of maturity of startups in various sectors, and we like to syndicate with financial venture capital funds, with other corporate venture capital entities, and the more the merrier. And basically, we try to bring value to startups which needs to scale up, sometimes in an industrial domain. So we are a small team. We've got about 60 investments so far. We invest also in funds. So that's the big picture, and our ticket sizes are between 0 and 5 million typically. So that's in a very fast brush. That's what we do. You can see our portfolio, which shows the diversity of topics we are looking at. We've had some vintages, the years where we were strong on biofuels. Then we had a period in energy storage, more recently smart energy, and then mobility. But then you'll see here circled in red, we are also investors in the hydrogen ecosystem. And what you see here is as we see more and more carbon neutrality objectives popping up everywhere, there is a bit of a return to industry technologies around hydrogen and also carbon capture. So if you move to the next slide, hydrogen, and here you have a snapshot here that I took from one of our portfolio company, which is called Sunfire. They make electrolyzers, and what's interesting with hydrogen, it's at the center of a lot of things that a company like Total does. It's maybe a solution to intermittency of renewables, as we saw with Airthium. It's also is a fuel for transportation, and also a source of energy which is low in carbon for industrial heat and other chemical processes. So it's really at the center. And so that's interesting because today, even though the hydrogen might be more expensive than existing solutions for a number of cases, because it's such a central place, we see that as an investor, we anticipate this to become a kind of a general platform molecule for energy transition. So it's, I think, compared to 2 years ago now, people still recognize it's often more expensive, but there is much less doubt that it will, find its place on the market. So with this in mind, the idea of us as an investor is to try and pick the good companies that will soar and thrive in this environment. Always the issue with this is we're looking at industrial environments, so things are not necessarily going very fast. So we don't want to be too early. We don't want to back startups that are 10 years too early in their markets. That's really the big difficulty with hydrogen today. But at the same time, we have at the moment a very strong regulatory push. So the speed at which hydrogen products and technology can develop can be pretty accelerated with this regulatory push. So there are still pretty good opportunities for investment. So here I show a couple of examples from our portfolio. Sunfire is a German company developing a line of electrolyzer products. We also have Hyzon Motors, which is a company developing heavy-duty trucks with hydrogen. And more recently, we announced an investment in Deep Branch. They make single-cell proteins for optimized for animal nutrition, and that are made from CO2 and hydrogen. We also have an initiative aside from our fund, which is an infrastructure fund that we are setting up with Air Liquide, notably. It's a $2 billion fund to stimulate and invest in hydrogen-related infrastructure, because we have always the chicken and egg problem with hydrogen. We need someone to pay for an infrastructure, but if we don't have end users, we don't build the infrastructure, and it can stay like this forever. So here, this idea of this fund is to cover this gap. And yeah, that was really quick. And we have a website. You can reach out to us if you like. It's Total Carbon Neutrality Ventures. And you can reach out on LinkedIn if you're interested. So we are always happy to discuss with startups, even with other investors and corporates. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Antoine, for your introduction of Total Carbon Neutrality Venture and giving your view on hydrogen. So next slide, please. Thanks all the speakers of today for their very interesting presentation. As this is the end for today, so next slide, please. Our next talk will take place on June 23rd and will be about a smart city. The following ones dedicated to digital construction will take place in September. So next slide. Thanks again to our partners who share the event within their networks. And please, so on the next slide, you will see the link to answer to our short survey in order to help us to improve and put you in touch with anyone that speak today. The idea is that every question during the session will get an answer. So don't hesitate to contact us. And also, if you want more information about the hydrogen subjects, we will be pleased to answer you. So next slide. Yeah, thank you very much. No, we don't have the time for the Q&A session. So thank you very much for today, and see you all in the next edition of Impulse Talks in June.